Listen to this if you just want to stay happy in life. Soft voice. Calm. Slow. The tone of someone who is not lecturing you, but revealing something you forgot you already knew. Happiness. What a simple word for something so endlessly complex. We spend years chasing it, months losing it, days missing it, and minutes pretending we have it. If you're listening to this right now, it's because a part of you is tired. Tired of the noise, the pressure, the expectations, the invisible weight of being okay all the time. You want something purer, something lighter, something real. But here's the truth most people never say out loud. Happiness isn't loud. It doesn't come crashing into your life with fireworks and applause. It arrives quietly, tiptoeing into the small corners of your day, disguised as peace. The world teaches you to look for happiness in the big things. The success, the achievement, the money, the admiration. But listen carefully. Those things are temporary highs, not lasting peace. Walter Riso once said, asterisk, if your happiness depends on things outside of you, you're handing your freedom away. Asterisk. And maybe that's what has been happening. You've been giving pieces of your happiness to everything around you, letting the world hold the strings of your emotional stability, your job, your relationships, your past, your mistakes, your fears, your doubts, your insecurities. One string at a time, your joy became conditional, dependent on situations, people, outcomes. Think about it. When was the last time you felt happy without a reason? When was the last time you woke up and didn't immediately think of what you lacked? When was the last time you let yourself simply exist? You see, the biggest trap of adulthood is believing happiness has to be earned, achieved, or deserved. But happiness isn't a trophy. Happiness is a practice. And maybe, just maybe, life has been trying to teach you this, but you've been too busy surviving to hear it. Because staying happy isn't about adding more to your life. It's about removing what steals your peace. Removing the voices that tell you you're behind. Removing the guilt for resting. Removing the habit of comparing your journey. Removing the weight of expectations you never agreed to carry. And here comes a twist. Happiness doesn't leave you. You leave happiness. Every time you give your power away to something external, your mind becomes a battlefield between I should be happy and why can't I feel it? Between I have everything I need and something is missing. Between I want peace and but what if others judge me? This conflict slowly drains your emotional oxygen. But here's the part nobody teaches you. You don't need a perfect life to be happy. You need a peaceful mind. Peace is not the absence of problems. Peace is the presence of clarity. The understanding that you can choose how much space each problem gets inside your heart. Happiness is not a destination. It's a mindset, a daily negotiation between your past and your future, a decision you make moment by moment. Do I choose joy or do I choose fear? Do I choose presence or do I choose worry? Do I choose gratitude or do I choose scarcity? Staying happy is not about eliminating pain. It's about not amplifying it. It's about not turning every worry into a catastrophe. It's about not letting one bad day define your whole story. And perhaps the greatest secret of all is this. Happiness grows in small moments, not big achievements. In the silence of your morning, in the warmth of a cup of coffee, in the comfort of knowing you survived another day, in the softness of forgiving yourself, in the bravery of letting go. You want to stay happy? Then you must become the guardian of your inner world, selective about what enters, what stays, and what must leave. And staying happy requires a kind of strength you don't even know you have yet. The strength to resist negativity, the courage to choose serenity, the wisdom to protect your energy, and the softness to give yourself permission to rest. But here's the real twist, the one you may not see coming. The happiest version of you is already inside you. It's just buried under layers of noise. Stay with me, because in part 2, we begin peeling back those layers. Slowly, gently, uncovering the version of you that happiness has been waiting to return to. The tone deepens, warm, firm, reassuring. This is the part where illusions begin to dissolve. There comes a moment in every person's life when you realize something unsettling. Most of your unhappiness doesn't come from what happens to you, but from what you tell yourself about what happens to you. Happiness isn't stolen by events. It's stolen by interpretation. A delay becomes failure. A mistake becomes identity. A rejection becomes unworthiness. A setback becomes destiny. You suffer more from your thoughts than your reality. Walter Riso often writes about cognitive slavery, the chains we place on ourselves through irrational beliefs. Beliefs like, I must be perfect. I must be loved by everyone. I must have everything figured out. I must never fail. I must always keep it together. These are prisons disguised as standards. And maybe, without noticing, you've been holding yourself hostage with expectations you were never meant to live inside. You want to stay happy? Then you must free yourself from the tyranny of should be farther in life, should have more money, shouldn't feel this way, should be stronger, shouldn't struggle. Every should becomes a blade against your peace. But here's the twist. There is no universal life timeline. There is no perfect path. There is no rule book. Happiness disappears the moment you compare your real journey to an imaginary one. You scroll through social media, comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlights. Their smiles, their vacations, their relationships. You forget that people curate their happiness. They don't show the cracks. And without realizing it, you start believing everyone else is living, and you are just surviving. But listen carefully. Comparison is the thief of joy, and the thief only steals what you already have. Meaning, your happiness didn't disappear. It was simply buried under the belief that someone else's life is better than yours. But happiness is not a competition. It's a personal rhythm, a private language. It's the art of finding beauty in your own imperfection. And here's something even deeper. Most people don't lose happiness. They abandon it every time they betray themselves. Every time you say yes when your soul says no. Every time you overextend just to be liked. Every time you silence your needs to avoid conflict. Every time you pretend to be fine to maintain an image. Every time you sacrifice your peace for someone else's comfort. You think being agreeable brings harmony, but it only brings resentment. True happiness requires boundaries, a soft heart with a strong spine, a willingness to say, this doesn't work for me, without guilt, because inner peace is expensive, and the price is often other people's approval. But here's the twist you didn't expect. Happiness grows every time you choose authenticity over acceptance, every time you tell the truth, every time you rest without feeling guilty, every time you say, I deserve better, every time you walk away from what drains you, every time you stop apologizing for your joy. Happiness is not the absence of struggle. It is loyalty to yourself through the struggle. And if you want lasting happiness, you must learn to protect your emotional territory like a sacred space. Let in what nourishes you. Close the door on what poisons you. And keep the key away from anything that thrives on stealing your calm. Because here is the most important truth so far. Staying happy is less about adding things, and more about subtracting the things that hurt you. The noise, the comparisons, the toxic expectations, the self-doubt, the guilt, the emotional clutter. Happiness can breathe only when you stop suffocating it. And maybe, just maybe, the version of you who wants to be happy is already fighting her way back to the surface. Stay with me, because in part 3, we enter the turning point, where happiness is no longer something you chase, but something you cultivate from within. The voice shifts, clearer now, stronger, almost luminous. This is the part where truth becomes empowerment, where the listener begins to rise. There comes a moment, subtle, almost invisible, when happiness stops feeling like a distant dream and starts feeling like a possibility again. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you begin to change the way you show up to life. This is a turning point. You begin to understand that happiness isn't something you pursue. It's something you practice, like watering a plant, like strengthening a muscle, like choosing sunlight instead of shadows. Walter Riso says, asterisk, emotional well-being is not accidental. It is intentional, asterisk. And suddenly, you start noticing the places where you have more control than you once believed. You can't choose what happens to you, but you can choose how much space it gets in your mind. You can't stop people from disappointing you, but you can choose who gets access to your heart. You can't erase the past, but you can choose not to live inside it. This realization is a quiet beginning of emotional freedom. Happiness begins the moment you understand that peace is not a gift. It's a responsibility. You start asking different questions. Not, how do I make life easier? But, how do I make my mind gentler? Not, how do I avoid pain? But, how do I grow from it instead of drowning in it? Not, how do I impress others? But, how do I stay true to myself? And with those questions, something powerful starts to happen. You begin removing yourself from what drains you. People only call when they need something. Situations that trigger your insecurity. Conversations that leave you feeling small. Habits that keep you stuck in cycles of exhaustion. You start choosing silence over chaos. Solitude over forced connection. Boundaries over guilt. Rest over burnout. Authenticity over approval. Little by little, your emotional landscape changes. And then comes a twist. The moment that surprises even you. You start enjoying your own company. Not because you've isolated yourself, but because you finally made peace with the person you are when no one is watching. You smile in the mirror without forcing it. You breathe deeper. You find humor in small things again. You feel gratitude rising like a soft tide, not because life is perfect, but because you're learning to savor the imperfect parts. Happiness stops being a chase and becomes a rhythm, a quiet rhythm of choices that protect your energy. You learn to let go without resentment, work without losing yourself, love without abandoning your needs, give without burning out, say no without guilt, rest without apology. And the most important of all, you learn to forgive yourself for the years you were hard on yourself, for the mistakes you made while trying to survive, for the moments you believed you weren't enough, for the dreams you delayed, for the happiness you postponed. Forgiving yourself becomes the emotional reset button you never knew you needed. And then you realize something life-changing. Happiness is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of inner alignment. When your values match your actions, when your heart matches your choices, when your truth matches your behavior, happiness becomes a natural result. This is a part of the journey where you start living intentionally, where you stop waiting for the world to calm down and learn to create calm inside yourself, where you stop waiting for happiness and start becoming the source of it. Stay with me, because in part 4, we step into the deeper transformation, the moment where happiness becomes your lifestyle, not your longing. The voice is calmer now, deep, wise, grounded. This is the moment where everything begins to come together, where happiness becomes a way of living, not a fleeting emotion. This is a chapter where you stop treating happiness like a visitor and start treating it like a home you are worthy of living in. By the time you reach this point, you've learned something most people never understand. Happiness doesn't arrive when life gets easier. It arrives when your inner world gets clearer. And this is where the real transformation begins. Because staying happy requires something most people avoid: emotional responsibility. Not the kind where you blame yourself for everything, but the kind where you take ownership of your thoughts, your reactions, your energy. Walter Riso writes, asterisk, you cannot control the wind, but you can adjust the sails. Asterisk. And happiness is exactly that, adjusting the sails of your mind every time life changes direction. You begin to focus less on outcomes and more on alignment, less on controlling the external world, and more on creating harmony within yourself. And slowly, something shifts. Your happiness stops depending on what happens and starts depending on who you are becoming. This is where emotional maturity steps in, the understanding that you don't need life to be perfect, to love the life you're living. You begin practicing something powerful and often underestimated: emotional minimalism, keeping what nourishes your soul, releasing what suffocates it. You begin to notice how much lighter you feel without overthinking every detail, engaging in pointless arguments, trying to fix everything, trying to fix everyone, carrying other people's emotional baggage, expecting yourself to be superhuman. Saying yes when your heart screams no. And then the twist arrives. The twist that feels like a revelation. Your happiness grows every time you choose peace over drama. Every time you protect your boundaries. Every time you walk away from what tries to control you. Every time you choose yourself without guilt. You understand that happiness is not found in intensity, but in consistency, in the soft rituals you practice daily. Like waking up grateful, even when you don't have everything you want. Like making your mornings sacred instead of rushed. Like taking care of your body as an act of self-love. Like spending time with people who don't drain you. Like keeping your word to yourself. Like celebrating your small progress. Like forgiving instead of poisoning your heart with resentment. Like resting before you collapse. And this is where another truth appears. Happiness is a discipline. It's choosing to give energy to what makes you grow and letting go of what makes you shrink. It's choosing perspective, choosing priorities, choosing presence. It's reminding yourself every day, I deserve to feel good without needing a reason. And slowly you begin to rise. Not grandly, quietly, not dramatically, steadily, not outwardly, internally. You feel yourself becoming lighter, more grounded, more aligned with your truth. People may notice the difference, but they won't understand it. They'll say you look calmer, more centered, more sure of yourself. And they'll be right, because the happiest version of you is the one who no longer betrays themselves for temporary comfort or external approval. The happiest version of you knows that peace is priceless. And the happiest version of you is the one who chooses inner harmony over outer validation every time. But your journey isn't complete yet. There's one final step, one final shift that transforms happiness from a daily practice into a lifelong way of being. Stay with me, because in part 5, we reach the final evolution, the moment where happiness becomes your default state, your emotional home, your way of walking to the world with unshakable calm. The voice now feels settled, warm, stable, certain. This is not the beginning of a journey anymore. This is the arrival. You've walked through the noise. You've learned to quiet your mind. You've discovered that happiness isn't something you wait for. It's something you build. And now, you're ready for the truth most people never reach. Happiness becomes effortless once you stop fighting yourself. This is the final evolution, the moment where you no longer chase joy, because you become the kind of person who naturally attracts it. Here's what no one tells you. The happiest version of you is not the most successful, or the richest, or the most admired. The happiest version of you is the most aligned with your values, aligned with your truth, aligned with your emotional needs, aligned with your boundaries, aligned with your purpose. Happiness stops being fragile when it starts being authentic. Walter Riso says, asterisk, a life without coherence is a life without peace. Asterisk, and coherence, inner consistency, is the secret to lasting happiness. Because happiness crumbles when your mind says one thing and your heart says another. When your words say yes, but your soul says no. When you smile outwardly while hurting inwardly. But now you know better. The final step is learning to live in alignment every day, not as a moment, but as a lifestyle. Here is where your happiness becomes unshakable. #1. You stop abandoning yourself. ***. You no longer ignore your needs. You no longer silence your truth. You no longer betray your values. You stand with yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. #2. You stop fearing endings. ***. Not everything is meant to stay. Not everyone is meant to go with you. And you stop clinging to what drains you. You let go gracefully because you trust what peace feels like. #3. You stop taking things personally. ***. People act from their wounds, their fears, their stories, not from your worth. You stop carrying other people's shadows on your back. #4. You begin to celebrate yourself. ***. Not just the big moments, but the quiet strength you show on ordinary days. You notice your effort. You appreciate your growth. You become your own source of encouragement. #5. You finally understand that your happiness is your responsibility. ***, not your partner's, not your parents', not your coworkers', not society's, yours. And with that responsibility comes power. The power to shape your inner world regardless of your outer circumstances. Then something beautiful happens. Something you never expected. You stop striving for happiness and start embodying it. You speak with more calm. You walk with more presence. You think with more clarity. Your heart beats without heaviness. You wake up without dread. Your laughter becomes real again. You feel lighter, not because life is perfect, but because you are no longer fighting against yourself. This is where you finally understand. Happiness is not an emotion. It's a relationship between you and your inner world. A relationship you now know how to nurture. A relationship you now choose with intention. A relationship that grows stronger each time you choose peace over chaos, truth over fear, growth over comfort, and self-love over self-neglect. And the greatest twist of all, the more you choose this path, the more life opens for you. Opportunities feel clearer. Relationships become healthier. Decisions become easier. Your intuition sharpens. Your confidence rises. Your soul finally expands. Because happiness was never outside you. It was waiting for you to return to yourself. So inhale deeply. Feel your chest rise with possibility. And whisper this truth to yourself. I choose happiness because I choose myself. Not just today. Not just when things are easy. But every day. As a practice. As a discipline. As a way of life. And from this moment forward, when things get difficult, and they will, you'll remember that happiness is not something you lose, only something you stop choosing momentarily. But you now know your way back. You know the path. You know the feeling. You know the truth. Peace is your home. Joy is your birthright. Happiness is your responsibility. And your life, your real, beautiful, imperfect life, is waiting for you to live it fully. Stay gentle. Stay grateful. Stay aligned. Stay happy on purpose.